Welcome back to the show. Now, the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board has been in the news in the past week with the Registrar, Professor Ishak Oloyede, making the headlines on the day he apparently broke down in tears and taking responsibility for basically, I don't even know what word to use, mishandling hundreds of thousands of Nigerians' exams and results across 6 states, 5 of them in the Southeast and Lagos State. We're going to try and delve into the people who are directly affected by this. I'm joined now by Mario Chukwuma, who's a student. Thanks for being here today. Thank you. And of course, Olanrewaju Oniyitan, who's the Executive Director, Seed Care and Support Foundation. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start with you, Mario. Where did you write the exams, first of all?
The first one or the second one?
The first one.
The first one, I wrote it at Palm Grove at an open university. That's where I wrote it as. Yeah.
Okay. Is this your first JAMB?
No, this isn't.
When did you write one first?
My very first JAMB was 2 years ago.
Okay.
When I was 16.
Okay.
I took it. I took one last year. I didn't get admission, so here I am.
What did you score last year?
I got 240.
240.
Yeah.
And the first one this year, you scored what?
157.
157. So when you saw that, did it make you feel, okay, maybe I didn't do well, or did you know something was wrong instantly?
At first, what first hit you is emotions just hit you. Depression, everything, it just hits you one time. I was like, I've disappointed myself, my dad. All the effort I've put was wrong because I got 157. My best subject is math, and I got 40 in math. So I was like, last year I just won best in math in my school, and I'm here scoring 40. It wasn't adding up.
Yeah, it didn't make sense.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. Then I got to my tutorial group. I go to a tutorial, and then I'm seeing people better than me scoring 157. So I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
So I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong.
So when you heard that, and your center was one of those that were affected.
Yeah, it was.
Where were you when you heard that, and did you understand? Because a lot of Nigerians have, maybe let me use the word mixed reactions to what the registrar has done. People say, oh, it's the first time we're seeing a Nigerian take responsibility. But the others who say, well, of course he should take responsibility. Hundreds of thousands of people are affected by this. Unfortunately, we even have a death in this. Did you feel better about that, or was it something that made you angry?
100%, I felt better that he took responsibility for what he did. Because you can't just go ahead and just say, oh, everyone is a failure. Because the numbers were too much. Out of 1.9, 1.7 failed. So I'm like, what is going on? So when I saw that we were going to resit, I was actually happy. But what I wasn't really too happy about was the timing. Because we had the news on Thursday. No, we had the news on Wednesday. On Thursday, they said reprint. That day, I woke up like 6. I'm now saying reprint. I'm like, okay, reprint. Then I checked the reprint, and I'm having an exam the next day. And I wrote exam in Bega, so I'm like, what is going on? I stayed with my grandma in Onike, so I'm like, what is going on? It's so crazy, and I have to get ready. I need to be prepared, and I'm writing exam the next day. So it's commendable for what he did, that he came out and he took responsibility. But the timing it wasn't just okay.
Let me come to you, because a lot of these issues are, you know, like he said, it was too much happening. We have this sudden revelation finally, your acceptance, you know, that this was mishandled. And I think another thing that troubled a lot of people was 2 days, 48 hours basically was the notice. We don't even know if everybody got this information. People in rural areas who might not be on social media, who might not be watching television, who probably might not have heard that this happened. The timing of this. And like I said, we did have someone who lost their life as a result of, you know, this entire situation. You work in the education space. Yeah. You work with a lot of young people. How has this whole thing felt to you?
First, my heart goes to the family of the girl that lost her life because of this. I really feel this. I understand how young people feel. And like you've mentioned, there are quite a number of people, even in Lagos, in low-income communities that didn't get this information that we had to be putting out so that the children can go back and, you know, get this. The timing was so short. He is even lucky. He had time to, you know, get ready for the exams. Those that are currently in school were writing WAEC on that day. Some had papers at 8 a.m. and they had to write JAMB at 6:30 a.m. that same day. So it was, I don't know why we were rushing, you know.
So that happened, because, sorry to cut you, because
Yes.
I thought I heard them say, oh, JAMB had discussed with YX, so they were going to have arrangements where things don't clash. So they still clashed?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you know, there was scrambling up and down. Some people already had scheduled YX at 8 o'clock, because it was JAMB that was rescheduling all of these things. And so there was a lot of confusion. People were confused. They didn't know what to do. Parents had already planned things they had to do. We had parents from low-income communities who were hustling, and their children had exam at 6:30 a.m. They had to leave their place of work. These parents earn daily pay to take these young children to faraway centers to go and write these exams because they couldn't leave them alone. They had to wake up at 4, you know, to get to the center, and, you know, you can't leave a teenager to go on a bus and start heading to their center before 6:30 a.m. So it was a lot of issues, it was a lot of challenges, and, you know, the information didn't reach a lot of people, and some children opted not to even rewrite. I mean, it is real trauma. Most times we adults were so beaten, we're used to this system. Oh, I wrote JAMB 6 times, it's not a problem. But it's abnormal, it's not normal. So because we are broken doesn't mean our children should be broken. So we need to ensure that we're looking at how our decisions impact our children today so that they can thrive and succeed.
That's very, very pointed there, because, I mean, there's been so many stories, we don't know what's true or not, about how long ago JAMB even figured this out or identified this problem, or how long it took them to come out and say something. You know, the young girl who passed away, Faith Opeshishi, I think is her name, scored 146 over 400. I mean, that could have been prevented if maybe this was said earlier. Sorry, this has been figured out. We don't know what's true or not. Hopefully we do actually have an investigation into things. The second exam you went to, how did that go this time? I was seeing stories about technical failures, things not working, because, I mean, I wrote JAMB when we were writing the paper. I know things are computerized now, so things are different. What was the second situation like?
The second situation, I had exams by 2 p.m., okay? The normal processes of logging in, everything, it went well. But during my own exam, personal exams, a girl beside me, she talked to one of the cables, she touched it, so 7 of us had server issues. So 7 of us got disconnected. So they said, calm down, don't worry, we'll fix it. We said, no problem. So they logged us out, so we were back to the homepage of writing your number. So they said, don't worry, your time isn't counting. That was cool. While I was writing, we got towards the end, 10 minutes to the end of my exam, it just cut. They said that we should submit and we should go home. I'm like...
So you were not given that time?
I wasn't given any time. At least you people saw me while we were writing that something happened.
What happened.
And 10 minutes more, I didn't answer half of my physics questions this second time. I'm like, what is going to happen now? But I spoke to one of them, one of the coordinators, and I asked her, Ma, look what happened, you were here. Can something go on about this? And she said, she smiled and she said, don't worry, you'll be fine.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
I don't know, this isn't funny, but it's also just mind-boggling. You talked a lot about, you know, people in all of these rural areas, people who even decided not to come back for it. How do parents handle situations like this now, even teachers? You know, people might be going, God forbid, for the 3rd or 4th time because of this entire situation. As a parent, how do you handle the child going through this?
I mean, I have a lot of friends, I have a lot of parents in the schools that we work with that do not even understand how to deal with this. You know, a lot of times we adults say, oh, this is how children will build resilience. But we don't. Resilience is when you face challenges that are natural and normal, not when the system is the one putting these abnormal challenges in, you know, for you to start to, you know, deal with. Parents are dealing with a lot of children that are tired, a lot of children that are frustrated, a lot of children that are doing a lot of things to cope with this kind of situation. And it's not, you know, you don't think you would have to go through this as a parent. My children are 16. I have a set of twins that are 16, and they haven't written JAMB, but I'm fearful about, you know, the situation. I wrote JAMB a couple of times. I passed every single year, but I couldn't get into school because one school would say, oh, you didn't pick us as first choice or something, and you have to, you know, just deal with it. And I knew how I dealt with it because as a young girl at that time, it wasn't funny that you passed WAEC at a sitting, you know, you did JAMB, you're actually passing, but you can't even get into school. And the question on my mind is, If he did it the first time and he got a certain score, and he did it the second time and he got a lower score, which one would JAMB even pick? You know, these are some of the questions on parents' mind that they've shared with me. Like, what would really happen? What's the situation? How is government going to deal with the trauma that they're causing children? These children are not just JAMB numbers. They are human beings. They are our future, that we need to be able to deal with their emotions and how, you know, they see our country. We want patriotic Nigerians, but their gateway, JAMB is now a gateway to their future. And we're toying with their future by doing all of this.
Two things I wanted to ask you, because one thing came up at the time when the first exam was being written, about the time. This 6:30 a.m. was so controversial. Why have 16, 15-year-olds, or whatever the age is, going to an exam for 6:30, which means they have to wake up at what, 4?
4.
It depends on where you live. If you're one of those that live in a place where you have to trek for miles because there's no public transportation, when then do you start your day? By the time the exam starts, are you mentally even okay to write this exam? There's that part. Then the second thing is what you brought up about writing exams and not getting into school. There's been the argument about this post-JAMB that universities do anyways. If you're going to make people write your own specific, you know, exams for your university, is JAMB still relevant?
So there are even quite a number of things to unpack with that question. So is JAMB even still relevant? JAMB, number one, the validity of JAMB. Because if I'm going to do post-UTME, and JAMB is valid just for 1 year, it means I have to continually write JAMB every year if I have to go into a university and I'm not taking. Then number two, the post-UTME calculation for the universities, they look at an aggregation of WAEC, JAMB, and their exam. That is what is triggering a lot of malpractice in WAEC, because if you don't score all A's, you're already at a disadvantage when they start to start to calculate the aggregates. So this is causing a lot of things. If I'm going to do post-UTME, why on earth am I writing JAMB every year? Or why is JAMB even existing? JAMB can just be a policymaker, coordinator, whatever they decide to do if they want to still be relevant. But if I still have to have 3 things before I can get into a tertiary institution, what are we saying about the low-income families in Nigeria? Are we saying they shouldn't go to university? Or we're trying to look for a way to say we don't have enough spaces in our university? What can we use to reduce the number? I mean, is this the birth control of education, to say we don't want this number of children to enter into university, so we create a lot of barriers for them not to get there? Because that's what it's telling us. It's not saying we're ready to take our children to go into tertiary institutions. It's saying we need to reduce the number because we've not made provision for tertiary education, because there's not a lot of public universities for the poor. I mean, private universities are springing up, you know, middle and high class families can take their children there. But what about the average Nigerian? What about the poor? How would they go to tertiary institutions if these barriers are in place?
Do you still have faith in JAMB? I mean, you said you were best in math. You have your WAEC, I believe, on NECO, or whatever it is.
Both.
You wrote JAMB the first time. You scored pretty good, didn't get into school. Second time now this has happened. Third time you've also had some drama, but you've not seen the results yet. Do you still feel confident, you know, with the system?
Actually, let me have a moment to think.
Yeah.
I believe in JAMB. I still believe in JAMB because I believe in Nigeria. So when something like this happens, is to review what has happened and say, how do we move forward? Because we can't keep looking at, this, and state the problems. Because the problem now is that everybody is just stating problems of this and this. What is the way to move forward? So the way to move forward is that we need to review what is going on, transparency, and most of these things that we talk about.
Yeah.
Then another issue I would like to bring up is the issue of the questioning system. In JAMB, they say that the computer shuffles a list of questions and gives you. There's no problem. But in a scenario where you have a bulky scheme of work, and then they give you, out of 100% of that, they give you 20%, and you read 80%. So that is another issue that I'm having, because in the first one that I wrote before the receipt, in my physics, I barely read electricity. It was something that I barely read. The scheme of work is very large. So I barely read electricity. I was like, they're like, nah, it can't really come out. In your mind, you're like, yeah. But then in the exam, it was just electricity. I was like, what is going on? What is going on? So I think that too needs to be looked at, because students go through hell to write this exam. I know people that went 7 months straight, just books, no life, no nothing. I want to just pass this JAMB. I just want to pass this JAMB. Please.
Is there a JAMB scheme of work?
Yeah, there's a JAMB scheme of work.
Separate from that's given to students, so you just have to figure it out?
It's kind of like almost the same thing, JAMB, WAEC, NECO. Okay. So JAMB zone is, they have their own, WAEC have their own. But it's just that it's so bulky, and then you expect at least 1 or 2 from each place. But out of 40 questions, you can see 30 of one topic. And someone goes ahead and they pass JAMB, and that's how it is. But I think that really needs to be reviewed too.
What schools are you trying to get into?
Federal universities, UNILAG.
Okay, all federal universities?
UNILAG, that's #1 that I'm looking forward to.
Do you feel, with your exams you've written now, do you feel like you would hit the same scores or better than your score last year? Or are you worried?
I'm worried I didn't complete
because you didn't
the exam. Yeah, but I have faith in my other 3 subjects in that. That's it. But if it doesn't hit, well, we look at other things. I'm getting old.
What are the things? You want to be an artist?
Other ways of getting into university.
Okay, getting into university. I mean, there are options, but like she said, a lot of them might not be reachable for a lot of people in their financial situation. Sometimes it's distance. A school might offer you an admission. Nigeria is not particularly the safest place right now. Nobody wants to throw their awards, across the country for several reasons. So all of that come into play. People have been shouting, resign, resign, resign. Does that fix anything? I mean, it would be a good sign that, okay, because in any other country, that would be the case. Multiple people, because this is a huge deal. But Nigerians are like, okay, resigns, then what? The person that was still coming there, is the person better? There's always devil's advocates for these things. Does that fix anything? And do you see, this move by the registrar as a sign that JAMB might actually do better going forward?
Okay, so there are a lot of people that have faith in the registrar. He seems to be, I mean, I don't know him personally, but he seems to be someone a lot of people respect, and people have, put their word for him. Like you've mentioned, in a lot of countries, people would have resigned. Even the service provider would know which company, is handling it and what went wrong. And all of those things would have been in the public space. However, I believe that it is what we're doing to correct things that matter. It is the systems, the institution, what we're putting forward in terms of, how we're correcting it. The first thing JAMB needs to do is be more transparent. We need to understand what is going on.
I feel like Nigeria
because it's a high-stakes exam. Yeah. They have a whole year to prepare for this exam. Every child's life is dependent on this exam. And it's really telling you, as a person, after I've gone to school for 12 years of my life, this is what would determine whether I can move forward or not. I mean, the best graduating student in UNILAG last year that got a perfect 5.0 score, he's our ambassador in my organization. He wrote JAMB 3 times.
I think I saw that story.
What does that say? Yes. So it's really, this is a high-stakes exam. We need the registrar to be more transparent. I mean, does he need to resign? It would have been great. I mean, it has signs that it will show, but, it's the correctional measures that matter now.
Thank you very much. I mean, there also whispers about class action suits. I don't know how many years that's going to take, considering how slow the judicial system here grinds. But, I mean, I think every option should be explored, because this should not happen again. Thanks a lot, Mario. Thanks a lot, Tora, for being here today.
For having me.
And I wish you all the best.
Thanks, sir.
I really hope things work out for you.